Welcome to Bowties, as sometimes call myself Ashley and Ed. Good evening, Ed.
Good evening, Ash. How's you this March evening?
It's really good, actually. It's the end of the week. I love my job immensely, but it's always nice when Friday comes around. So, yeah, all good. And James, we're joined by James as well. James, how are you?
I am not bad. I'm not bad at all, chaps. Thank you for having me. I hate my job immensely, and I'm delighted it's the weekend so I can work on real stuff.
Yeah. Ed, James, you don't have to thanks for having me. You're the official third bow tie. I've actually had
Bless
to
you.
go back and change some of the wording in the descriptions on the videos to because they said two chaps. Had to change it to three. You wouldn't have
Aye.
noticed that. Now, James, this evening we are joined by a very special guest. Now,
We really
I'm
are.
going to hand this over to you because I know you know this gentleman, and I know you've got the first set of questions as well. So, if I could pass over to you, you can introduce our guest.
I am be honoured to, and really can't thank him enough for making the time to our chat with us tonight. We have got the legendary and supremely talented Borna Matosic joining us, who regular listeners will know immediately from Big Finish and lockdown choir work that he's done, and his multitude of spectacular YouTube covers, as well as his immense catalogue of original music. Borna, thank you so much for being with us.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me on. Looking forward to a great chat.
Lovely. Yeah, we are honoured and thrilled and can't thank you enough for your time. So, what are we going to do? Because we just went through, I'm going to give a little bit of a background to you. It's a bit like This Is Your Life here, only I'm not carrying a big red book. Let's go with a little bit of a chat about your background, your discovery of your musical talents, etc. Ask you a few questions, and then the delightful Ed will take over with some, I am sure, far more incisive and delightful questions than me. So, if you're good to go, um, Borna, you were born in Croatia and moved with your family to Germany, where you are still based today in the beautiful and rather ancient city of Cologne. It's 2,000 years old, if I remember rightly, Cologne. Your musical background stems quite famously now. I know you've told the story a couple of times to a famous yellow toy guitar that you rescued from your school's dustbin, and that from that moment, what would become your lifelong love of music began to blossom. The guitar came home with you. You promptly used it and its one remaining string to record a sitar cover before borrowing your friend's acoustic guitar and, in true Tenacious D style, rocking around your bedroom until you could save up for a decent electric and amp that was worthy of your burgeoning talent. Your original intention, because you're a star, was to complete the entire back catalogue of Iron Maiden. Rock on. But you discovered when you powered up that amp for the first time, I'm tempted to ask if it was all the way to 11, but I'm not going to be that cliche. You discovered straight away that you love composing your own music instead. Um, Aged 11, you programmed your first website, and since then, as much as you've thrown yourself into the music world, you have leapt into the worlds of digital and media as well. So as you've grown up, you began writing, scoring, and in some cases, producing your own short films, and all the while continuing your own self-education in guitar mastery. So that's a little summary for our listeners of Borna. So, Borna, you are a chap whose love of music is obvious, and it also really feels like music kind of loves you back. Have you always had what seems to us as listeners this natural affinity with music and melody and understanding how music works?
Oh, first of all, that was a great summary, and you really did your homework. I have no idea where you discovered the fact that I programmed my first website at the age of 11, but yes, that's absolutely true. Oh yeah,
Yes.
I must
You,
have
you, you,
must
you
have
think I'm in
included
Manchester?
it
I'm
somewhere.
actually sat behind you in that camper van now.
So to answer the question, um, probably not. In some ways, yes, I've always had this feeling for music, but I didn't know about it because when I started to play my first notes on a little keyboard at the age of 5, it was one of those toy keyboards for kids. I just started playing around and I had melodies in my head and I just tried to find the correct keys to transcribe those melodies that I was hearing onto this keyboard, and it worked. And I don't remember the melody, but I still remember kind of the shape of it. So I could probably in some way reconstruct what I was doing back then. But the thing is, I wasn't really interested in music overall because what I perceived as music was the stuff that I heard on MTV, which I really didn't like. It was back in the 90s, all those electro dance tracks and pop music, not my style at all. Not back then, and even now, I don't listen to that kind of stuff. So I just assumed, since I don't like the stuff that's on MTV, I don't like music. Obviously. That must be the explanation. But then I one day I realized, oh, wait a minute. The music that I hear in movies and in video games, I really like that kind of music, the not real music, as I thought of it back then, because if it's not on MTV, it can't be real music. So I wasn't really interested in music, and I didn't even pursue any instrument back then, even though I had this. What many years later, I realized I had this kind of born. I was born with this talent to be able to hear melodies in my head and be able to translate them onto an instrument. It was only much later, as you said, when I had my electric guitar, um, at the age of 20, I think. No, I think late teens was when I got my electric guitar, something like that. And when I formed my first band, and my bandmates weren't able to just play the stuff that I sang to them, that was when I realized, oh, okay, so this is not something that's just anybody is born with. I was just lucky.
And I love hearing you talk about your early steps and your early discoveries of of what would become a love of music, but initially that understanding of, yeah, you have got a talent. Well, you talk again on your website, and please do, if you're listening, pop along and have a look at Borna's website, because it's tremendous. You talk about especially your love of Iron Maiden, and the influence that's had on you. And for me as a fellow fan, I used to adore. In fact, probably up until I found out Bruce Dickinson voted for Brexit, I used to still regularly listen to Maiden, and now it's like Roger Daltrey and Sex Pistols. Now all these people you used to love, and they're coming out with Anyway, that's a sidetrack. But I can hear that people like Adrian Smith, Dave Murray, Yannick Gears. I can hear that in your style and how that might have influenced you. And in your own personal style and how you present and in your videos, you have the image of the classic metalhead rocker. But it would be a lie to say that should be the only influence on you. You just mentioned you're drawn to soundtracks, video, game music in particular. So have you always had these then fairly eclectic tastes?
It seems like I did, because I know many people who say, like, they have this list of stuff that they used to listen to when they were kids, but then their taste evolved over the years and they started to listen to other stuff, and they're kind of embarrassed of what they used to listen to back then as kids. And I never had it. I never listened to those kids music stuff, not to the MTV stuff. So I always liked the stuff that I liked, which I still like today. So for some reason, I'm not very uh, manipulated by trends. Let's say it like that. Whenever
Yeah.
whenever there is a trend, to my own detriment, actually, because if I was more susceptible to trends, I could jump on that trend and be much more successful. But I just do my own stuff. So I do the stuff that I always liked. Yeah. So that's just my taste. I don't know why it doesn't change much, but I listen to, even back then, I think I was 10 years old when I played Super Nintendo. I had all the Super Mario music, the Zelda music, all those role-playing games that they had on the Super Nintendo back then were absolutely incredible. Secret of Mana, Terranigma, Final Fantasy, actually I discovered later, but still great music. And I even had, I told my mom back then, hey, can you record the music? Because you couldn't listen to it and to this type of music anywhere. They didn't sell soundtracks of that 8-bit music.
Ah,
Nobody thought people would want to listen to that. But I had my mother record on tape back then, on cassette tape, the soundtracks that I was listening to, so that I could, when we were on vacation, have it on my Walkman, listen to Zelda and stuff like that.
that's brilliant. It's fantastic. And there's a lot to be said for creative integrity. You like what you like, and if you don't want, you're not feeling, the latest trend or whatever, don't get involved. I love that. But I get what you're saying. It, yeah, it could make us have a lot of success if you were inclined.
Yeah.
Um, so there's a lot of things there. I mean, I know Ed's going to ask you about your particular influences and some of the composers that you've enjoyed, but you're just taking that kind of heavy metal, hard rock genre and comparing it with certainly some of the more big bombastic movie soundtracks that are out there. I suppose, although they're very different in some ways, the theatricality of them make them quite similar. They're attention grabbing. They make you sit up and take notice of what's going on. So, as a musician, not just with those two, but are there common aspects of these what sound to us like very different styles that draw you in? Do you feel?
Actually, yeah. I mean, many people say that especially metal music is kind of a modern version of classical music, in that it has this very big epic feel about it, and it's not music that is made to listen to it in the background while doing something else. It's actually music that requires you to focus on it, to actually just sit down with the artwork in your hand, reading the lyrics while you listen to it, to get most out of it. And yeah, orchestral music is the same, except you don't have the artwork, which would have been fun to have some kind of Iron Maiden style artwork for Beethoven and Mozart.
Oh
I'm
God, someone's
sure
got to do that.
they would have done it if they could have. I can imagine. People say that those guys would be metal composers nowadays. And you have the sort of crossover people like
Mm.
Yngwie Malmsteen, who kind of do this neoclassical music, and they just play electric guitar like it was a violin. It
Mhm.
sounds amazing. It translates perfectly because the roots are kind of the same. It's
Mm.
classical music mixed with rock, and you get metal. And throw in the dark lyrics about death and despair, and you're there. Personally, I lyrics they are important, but I focus much more on the melody. And lyrics have to be really bad for me to not like a song because of the text. So I have high tolerance for that. Another common aspect is, I think, it's very melodic. You
Mm.
have metal and orchestral music. Melody comes first. That that is at least what I really like about it. I
Mm.
I like the very melodic stuff, not so much the shouting. If your vocalist is just shouting, it can be interesting. There's bands like Cradle of Filth, where the this type of vocal approach, if you want to call it that, goes into all kinds of different directions. It's not just the low growl, but it's the high pitched scream and everything. It,
Mm.
it's an art form in itself. But I do usually listen to the very melodic stuff.
Yeah, so well, that's what draws you to Maiden, I'm sure. But any of those, particularly in the 80s and 90s, those bands, Metallica were the same. It was heavy and hard, but yeah, there was a tune there. There was a melody. Well, and everything that you're saying makes sense to me when my son son and my daughter when they were born. Um, the nurse at the antenatal classes told us when you're wanting to soothe your baby. And I didn't believe it at the time, but it works. Said there's two forms of music that will get your baby to sleep. One's classical and one's heavy metal. And it's, oh, cool, that's nonsense, but it was true. And apparently, it's just because it's layered music, so the baby understands it and can interpret it in the same way because it's layered and it's contextualized. So yeah, that's fascinating. Thank you. Can I ask a cheeky question as a Maiden fan? What's your favourite lineup?
Well, that is difficult to answer. As someone who got into Maiden early 2000s, I got to know the band in its current lineup actually. So I've always I've seen a lot of criticism for Yannick Gers for his antics and his playing style, but I really have a lot of respect for him. He's absolutely crazy what he does. I love Adrian Smith, love Dave Murray, but I would not want to have the band without Yannick Gers at the moment because he brings a lot of energy to the live performances. And one thing that cannot be underestimated is his songwriting skills. So even if you're not a real big fan of his guitar playing, which many people maybe aren't, his songs are some of the best that Maiden have done in the last 20 years. So stuff like Dance of Death, love that song. And um, not Talisman, what was the other one? Um, got the title of it. Anyway, he creates great songs that when I listen to the albums, I often have one standout track, and more often than not, on the Yannick Gers albums, he was part of making that one specific track.
Uh, no, he's cool. I love him for exactly what you said. He's crazy.
He's totally
Fantastic.
crazy. I always say he himself doesn't know what he played on the album, so that's why he can't replicate it live. He just does whatever he feels like doing in that moment. So yeah, even though it's probably not the most popular answer to this question, I would say the current lineup is the one for me.
Oh, good man. Good man. I like that. But you know, yeah, I think I agree. Yannick gets a lot of stick, but that's what the true creatives do, and that's why. And again, you guys need to watch this film. That's why in the Blues Brothers they had such a problem getting James Brown and Aretha Franklin dubbed because they never sang a song the same way twice. So there you go. Sorry, I'm sidetracking again, bud. Um, you've talked in the past, and this is one word I am going to stumble over. You've talked in the past about being autodidact, which essentially means entirely self-taught. So you taught yourself the guitar. I know you did do some study later on for musical theory, a little bit later on, but I'm guessing it's not as simple as saying, "Oh, I've taught myself the guitar," because many people I have tried to teach myself chords, but I can't play music. Um, and I've heard you play in lots of different styles, and it always comes across that you really feel the stuff that you're playing. So, aside from the aspect of technical learning, do you find that you connect with these different styles of play easily? Is there any style that you've tried and thought, actually, this isn't for me? I'm not going to do it.
Probably lots of styles. If you want to really do them justice, I'd say I'm most proficient in rock and metal, obviously. And whenever I do pop stuff, um, blues, jazz, whatever, it feels a little less authentic, I'd say, at least to my ears. What I think is important is that no matter which style you try to play, you you have to develop your ear first, so that you are able to really listen to what you're doing. And once you are able to hear what you're doing while you're doing, it becomes so much easier to get a good performance out of it. That was one of those things when you start to play guitar and you learn a complicated guitar solo, for example, and you feel like you're able to play it. And then for the first time you record yourself playing it, you listen back to it, you're completely shocked. And you're thinking, what the hell? This is not what I played. It was perfect when I played it, and the recording is just bad. Must be my instrument or my poor recording gear. Something's not right. But no, the answer is it's none of those things. It's your poor playing, which and your poor ears, which were not able to pick up on all those little flaws that the playing has. It's just yeah, it's a difficult thing. So you have to record yourself over and over until you get into the state where your ear is developed enough that the thing that you hear while you're recording it gets closer and closer to what you hear once you have recorded it and you listen back to it. So that is the thing that I think many people struggle with, that they just they play the instrument and the notes are in the right spots, but something's missing. Why is David Gilmour one of the most popular guitarists to this day? He doesn't play super complicated stuff, but the way how he plays it is just mind blowing. I spent, I don't know, probably a week trying to analyze the Comfortably Numb guitar solo, the big one at the end, and trying to pick out all the little details that he puts in there until I could replicate it pretty closely. I don't sound like Gilmour when I do it, but I think it's one of the closer ones out there, which I have never actually released. I only do it. I've done it live a few times.
Uh-huh.
Probably I should record a cover sometime. But that is the answer. It's just I try to work on my ears so that I can hear how it's supposed to sound and then hopefully somehow realize it when when I record it. So even if I'm not too fluent in one style, I just try again and again until it sounds like the way I want it to sound. I'm just a perfectionist. I think that is another thing. I just try until it works.
Well, it's certainly working very well on what you've released so far. Please, please do a cover of that. That'd be fantastic. I mentioned in the intro, Borna, that you've been involved with digital and media work, and you've started making use of this when you entered some short film festivals, and later with your first foray into Doctor Who music. The first one you recorded and released, I think, was the Regeneration medley, shortly after Jodie took over the role, and made some great use of green screen and video editing, which kind of helped you stand out a little bit from some of the other covers that were on YouTube. How important a part of your creative identity is that side of your passion, the digital and media stuff?
I think it's very important because I while I do have this big love for rock and roll and metal stuff, I since the first time I listened to those video game tracks back in the day, I always had this feeling that I would love to do something like that. I don't know why, but it's not the most common idea for a kid. Usually people say I want to be an astronaut or a fire what is it, fireman, firefighter. That's the word. Uh, for me, it was yeah, astronaut too at some point. But then it's very quickly this idea came to my mind that I want to create those melodies that people listen back to and inspire them, because that was what happened to me. I listened to the music in those video games, and I was super inspired by it. It opened this whole world, even though it was just 8-bit bleepy bloopy sounds and the graphics weren't great, but in my head everything was super epic and big. And actually to this day I still think this 8-bit sound or 16-bit or whatever, however much it got, it actually sounds cool. It's an art form in itself. When you try to recreate, which I've tried to recreate some of those old tracks, and I thought, naive as I was, I'll just replace those 8-bit sounds with my samples, and it will sound so much better, and people will love it. And what happened was, I made this track with much better sounding instruments, and it completely lost its magic. It didn't sound anything like I hoped it would, because it takes so much more work than that. You actually, if you put that music in front of an orchestra, it will sound amazing. But if you just replace those bad sounds with new bad sounds, it sounds worse. It's a funny thing actually. But yeah, so that was one thing that I was always so inspired by, and for me it was a big thing to not just write music for rock bands, but to have the opportunity to write orchestral music myself, be it for video games or for short films or whatever, just having this opportunity to play with other instrumental colors. Heavy metal, as much as I love it, it tends to be you have drums, electric bass, electric guitars, lots of them, and great vocals, and that's pretty much it. Iron Maiden got so much hate back in the day when they first started to use keyboards. They were almost sellouts for using keyboard elements. Of course, other bands later on, the whole power metal genre is basically just keyboards. It feels like it. So you kind of limited in that sense. And media music, the great thing about it is usually no two projects are the same. You can write a jazz song one day and then you work on another project where you have to do really full orchestral stuff. Then I don't know, maybe some chamber music, whatever. The whole palette of music, everything that's out there is possible. You can do a techno song if you have to, if it fits. And
it
you
won't
can
fit. Don't do a techno song.
oh yeah, you'd be surprised. My Unit Brave New World soundtrack uses some tricks. It's not techno music, but it incorporates some of those 90s techno elements. Very it's not very prominent, but I did include them in there to kind of date the music that I'm doing for it. So you can fuse elements together. There's no rules basically. That's a great thing about it. You can do whatever you want. That's why this is one style of music, not one style, one umbrella of music work that I would like to work for, would like to work in this field forever, because it inspires people. It challenges my own creativity. It's great.
That's a great answer. And incidentally, your unit music, that was the first time I think I encountered you. And that was because our friend chaps, Ali Winter, was a writer on the unit, on the first unit season. And so I got it because I wanted to listen to Ali's story. What music? This is great music. You wrote this. And then we went and found your good self. So that one does mean a lot to me, actually. Last one from me before I hand over to the phenomenally better prepared Edward. Right throughout your career, so for everything that I've seen and listened to, you clearly enjoy working and collaborating with other artists in lots of different ways. Not least the Lockdown Choir, which Ed's going to talk about, but massively talented artists like Alex Silver, the Mesdames Musicales, who you've done a lot of work with, including a lot of Bond and Bond-inspired music. And also when you're scoring short films with Big Finish again, you're composing music to match the words of a story that somebody has written, which is all just as collaborative as working with musicians. How easy is it for you personally to find that groove with the people you work with and know when you're in the room or you're in the studio, something exciting is coming out of you all pooling your energies?
Oh, interesting question. I think it always depends on the people. It can be super easy, and at the same time, it can be completely impossible. It always depends on who you're working with. And as you said, the Mesdames Musicales, if you want to say the French pronunciation, they are all German, so I don't know why they have this name, but it's a cool name. Um, they are just great people. So apart from being excellent musicians, they are just great people. Super easy to work with, fun to hang out with, and working with them. That's one of the reasons why I'm doing so many projects with them, because I just know when we're in the room together, it works. It's a very inspiring atmosphere, a great collaboration, and that's the thing. You have to find people that really are on the same wavelength, and then everything is possible. Luckily, I've especially with Big Finish, I have only had very good connections with those people, and I think probably because we all are there, as they say in the slogan, for the love of stories, and it's true. Everybody who works on those stories is doing it not for the money, but just to tell the best story they can tell, and it's a super inspiring atmosphere to be part of something like that.
Beautiful, thank you. Listen, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to answer my questions. But I'm going to hand the baton over now to Ed, who's got some fine questions of his own to give you. Thank you, Borna.
Thanks, James, and thank you, Borna. So, James has already sort of touched on musical influences of yours. Obviously, Iron Maiden, metal, power metal. You touched on, Dave Gilmour, Pink Floyd, so prog. One thing I've picked up, when you're talking to James there, is about music from video games. Are you still a gamer?
I am indeed, not as
Okay.
much as I should be. So probably maybe more a casual gamer, you
Okay.
would say nowadays. But I'd say at the core, I am a gamer. It's just
Yeah.
time is a problem nowadays. So the thing is, I'm a perfectionist in everything I do, and that includes video games. I'm totally obsessive. When I start a game, I need to do everything that this game has, all the side quests, and the problem is the games have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and they are now open world. And if you try something like Skyrim, or even the New Zelda games, the world is so incredibly big that it's a far too big of a time commitment if you have this perfectionism that I have. So I can't do that anymore. What I can do is if something's more story driven, like the Xenoblade Chronicles, those are such great games on the Nintendo Switch. Not just because they have great stories. The stories are amazing. The voice acting is amazing. The music is perfect. I love the music. So those are my games that I play nowadays. They don't, of course, I have to wait a year, two, three, however long it takes for them to do a new one. But when a new Xenoblade Chronicles games come out, I sit down and I know, okay, I need a vacation. I need like 2 weeks of non-stop gaming to get through this, get everything out of it. And then I will not play a single video game for the next, I don't know, 12, 13 months. So when I'm a gamer, I'm hardcore gamer, and the rest of the time I don't play. That's
The,
nowadays.
the reason I touched on that is that I've recently been starting to playing Metroidvania style games, and there's two with particularly evocative scores, and really, I mean, the music that stands out. I don't know if you've heard of them. There's one called Ender Lilies, Japanese.
Uh,
It's all
no,
very for piano and strings. And then with you being in Spain, another one, Blasphemous, and that is all on the Spanish flamenco guitar. And it's just how it's set sort of during the time of the Inquisition. So it's sort of just suddenly how something music you can close your eyes and it touches your soul and it transports you to that place without seeing the graphics on the screen. You know that Blasphemous is set in Spain because of the music. It sort of drips Spanish, and it's made by a Spanish company called the Games Kitchen. So they know their history, and it just absolutely wonderful. It's really touching on games earlier. Just brought that back to me. And I've made notes as James was talking to you, but yeah. So that's a bit of a side point, I know, but
I need to check that out. But when you mentioned the Metroidvania
yeah,
with great music, my first thought was Ori and the Will of the Wisps. That
yes.
is that is absolute masterclass of the soundtrack. I think both of those games have beautiful music. It's great graphics too, super fun games to play, but the music is the thing
Oh,
that
yes.
completely takes it to another level. It's one of the best soundtracks that I've heard in a long time.
Yeah. So as I said, it was just really a side point. It wasn't a question I was going to ask, but James touched on games, and those two really, especially Blasphemous, really. So I thought I'd ask you if have you played that. But going on to you now, the first time I was aware of you was during those awful years of the COVID pandemic, where yourself and Emily Cook got together to do the lockdown choir. Can you tell us a bit about that, please, and how it came about?
It's all started with I did a few YouTube covers of Doctor Who music, and occasionally I get comments on those where people request they request me to do something else from Doctor Who. And one of those comments was right at the start of the pandemic, while we were all in lockdown, and this person requested that I do the long song. And I just thought, how should I do that? I mean, the long song, it's a beautiful melody, it's a great composition, but it's one of those things where I feel like you need a choir to do it. I could have just played the melody on electric guitar and it would have been cool, it would have been something different. But I felt like the choir is such an essential part of this whole composition, of the orchestration of it, that in order to do it justice, you actually need a choir. And just at that time, I was on Twitter and saw Emily Cook's shout out for the tweet-alongs that she did back then, where everybody would come together and watch one of the Doctor Who episodes, and everybody would tweet synchronized to the episode. It was a super fun event for fans worldwide, and for some reason, because of the timing of this, I just put the two together and had this idea. Wait a minute, if we can tweet along at the same time, what would happen if we could sing along at the same time? Now, of course, you'd have to create some super giant Zoom session where everybody joins in and try to synchronize while everybody's singing. That it wouldn't work. But I had this idea. Okay, maybe if we just invite people, the whole fandom, to sing one song and send me the recordings, and I could put them together, and then it would hopefully turn out fine. That was the idea that I had, and the problem was I knew my social media reach is not particularly big. I could do a shout out and say, "Hey, who wants to sing on my Doctor Who cover?" And I would probably get 10 submissions, and that wouldn't have been enough for this type of thing. So my idea was to contact Emily and tell her about this idea. And luckily, she was on board immediately because she thought it was a cool idea. And she was super helpful in getting the word out and organizing this whole thing with me. So that's how that happened.
And you've had all these submissions from all these fans, including this person you're speaking to now, and obviously of varying quality, because not everyone is the best. Not everyone's Freddie Mercury. Not everyone is Tarja Turunen. No, not everyone are those. So you've had all these people singing their hearts out to the chorus of the long song. How difficult a job was editing all that together and making it sound as epic and as grand as it did?
Oh, it was a big challenge, not because of the quality of the singing particularly, but just the whole scope of this project was so ambitious, and it was a bit nerve-wracking because I had this feeling I could pull it off, but I wasn't sure how it would all work out. And especially we had people from all over the world joining in these sing-alongs, and they were recording themselves because we wanted to make this as easy as possible, as accessible as possible. The idea was to give everybody the opportunity to take part. You didn't have to be a great singer. You just had to have the courage to actually record yourself and send it over to a complete stranger over the internet and hope that you would not get embarrassed for some reason. So I think it worked out perfectly. So the thing was, the challenge was all those different recording devices and recording environments. Usually you have a choir, everybody is standing perfectly in a great sounding room, and they are trained singers and everything's perfect. Here we have all kinds of different singers singing at different loudness levels, in different locations. I heard one was kind of singing on the construction site, sounded like it. Another person was singing in a car. Person was singing in bedrooms, in living rooms, in bathrooms, everywhere, on iPhones, on video cameras, on you name it, everything. So my hope was to get the sort of stadium effect that you have when 80,000 drunk people are singing in a stadium, and not one of them is a singer, and they're just shouting lyrics, but they're all synchronized. And for some reason, in the stadium, you kind of get a feeling for the melody that they are trying to sing. So that was my idea. If we get enough people, we can get this stadium effect, and the melody that we need for the song will come out. And the shocking thing was, I spent probably a week to align all those tracks. We had over 300 submissions for the long song. So it took a long time to synchronize it all, to level out the volumes, to pan out the voices in the stereo spectrum and everything. And once I had done this, up to that point, I only listened to the voices isolated. And then when I had them all synchronized for the first time, I clicked the play button and unmuted all the voices. And when I heard this choir that we had all of a sudden, I was completely blown away because it was so much better than anything that I was expecting it to be. It was absolutely crazy. So you, as someone who took part in it, how much courage did it take for you to take part in this?
I mean, in real life, I'm a naturally quite a reserved, shy person. However, as my wife and son will tell you, I sing at the drop of a hat. I will just burst into song for no reason. It annoys my son. It probably annoys my wife, but she's too nice to say anything about it. But I like singing. I'm not a brilliant singer, but I like singing. So to stand in front of an iPhone with some headphones on, just singing along to the chorus of that and hoping it didn't sound awful. If you'd have asked me to do it in front of people, I probably wouldn't have done it. But in the room, it was actually in the room I'm in now, doing that, then yeah, it didn't. And to send it through, because I think Doctor Who fandom on Twitter, especially at that time, was a very safe space. And we were all of this, I think the people who got involved would be all of a similar mind and all doing it for the love of doing it rather than, oh, I'm singing better than you. I'm better, and there was nothing of that in it. It was just doing something for the love of something in the worst of times. And I'm really glad I took part in.
Yeah, thank you for having the courage to do it. And yeah, as you mentioned, the whole community aspect of it was just amazing. My my hope was to get something that sounds really good because as you know, as I told you, I'm a perfectionist. But that wasn't the actual idea behind it. The idea was to do something fun for the community with the community, and a lot of people got a great even a confidence boost. Some people just from seeing their name in the credits that we did. Just having had the opportunity to participate in a Doctor Who production, even though it was just a fan production, but it became part of the Doctor Who history at that point. So we are all in it together. It was a great time.
Definitely, most
I mean,
definitely.
it was a bad time, but in this bad time, it was a sign of hope.
Yes, absolutely. And this thing, it's. I think I've written down a few notes. Is sometimes music really, really speaks to the soul, and when you listen to it, it's evocative of a time and place. And every time now I hear the long song, it reminds me of just a little beacon of light in those awful times. So it will always mean that to me. I think hearing it for the first time as well, I always find the original long song has got a melancholy quality to it, but your version had a grandeur and an epicness. And you sort of made, even though you had 300 or 400 other people taking part, you really, really made it your own. And as I said, you stamped your mark in history.
We all did.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you very, very much. So I'm going to come on to your work for Big Finish now because I'm a huge Big Finish fan. Actually, I've actually got it on my phone here. I'm actually in the middle of listening to Victory of the Doctor at the moment. Listened to episode 1 last night. You've done a couple of soundtracks for Big Finish. James has alluded to the ones for the unit, and then there's the 11th Doctor as well. How exactly were you commissioned by Big Finish? How were you approached?
You could say this was a direct result of the sing-alongs that we did, the lockdown sing-alongs, where I, for the first time, worked with Emily Cook, who, as yeah, she shortly after the sing-alongs, she started to work for Big Finish as a producer. And while we were doing the sing-alongs, we were joking, "Hey, we this is working so well. We were just a great team, and we have to at some point work on something official at some point." And that's how it happened. She took over as a producer on the Unit Brave New World series, which was just in the beginning stages. It was the new thing coming up, and she knew that she wanted something special, a different sound, so to speak. Not the usual orchestral sound, but something where she thought I could do that. And she luckily she reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to do it, and of course I said yes because this sounded like the perfect opportunity. I mean, I would have done any Big Finish, just of course, but this one sounded particularly interesting because she told me in the beginning that this was supposed to be a sort of blend of 90s Doctor Who, but with X-Files thrown in. So there are a lot of X-Files influences in this, and uh, can you imagine just at that time when she told me this, I was just finishing a rewatch of the X-Files. So I was completely immersed in that type of 90s TV show and the whole soundscape that Mark Snow was doing with the soundtracks back then. So that was one part that I found very interesting about it. Because I love the X-Files, I love Doctor Who, and this was the opportunity to kind of create that something musically that connects the two, which hopefully worked out. I think that there are a few hints to the X-Files in the soundtrack that I did.
And the 11th Doctor Chronicles you've done as well. Was that a direct follow on from doing the unit work?
Pretty much, yeah, because Alfie Shaw, who wrote the third episode in the first set, and I think was he the editor? I think he was script editor too. But he did write the big cliffhanger episode at the end of the first set, and he must have liked what I've done for the music because he was the producer of the 11th Doctor Chronicles, and he just needed a new composer because the other guy got hired by Netflix basically. So he didn't have the time to complete his mission. And that was lucky for me because this second show gave me the opportunity to not just write music for the Doctor Who universe, but actually contribute my own themes for the Doctor, for the Daleks, for the Cybermen, and all that fun stuff. So that was a particular challenge and very much of interest, very inspiring. That's how
Fantastic.
that happened.
That's amazing. Your music, you've covered, music, Bond, Doctor Who. If you've a couple of really, if you haven't seen them, guys, there's a couple of amazing Bond covers on Borna's YouTube page. But this, I know what I mean by this question, and hopefully it'll come across well. Is there a moment when you're listening to a particular piece of music? For example, when you first heard The Shepherd's Boy, was there a moment when you were listening to it when suddenly you thought, that's something I want to make my own, that's something I want to put my mark on? Do you know instantly when a piece of music is something that you want, that it's more than just something you've heard, it's something you want to be part of?
You could say that, yes, because the music that I usually cover, I mentioned earlier that I'm not so much trying to ride trends or catch some wave of hype, but the stuff that I do is mostly completely based on what inspires me. So when I listen to a piece of music that creates a strong emotional response in me, that usually means that I have a good idea how I can recreate it in my own style because it does something with me. And when I do a cover, I can do a cover of anything, but it it doesn't. I don't think it would be a really good result if I try to cover something that I'm not inspired by, because then it's just I'm doing some work. It's a workload and I finish it and that's it. But when it inspires me, I try to capture this feeling and recreate it. And that's probably not the number one reason why I do something. One why I pick the covers that I pick. It's just this immediate response of ooh, this creates shivers or goosebumps or whatever, and then I just go ahead and try to recreate it, but with my own spin. And the biggest probably result of this is my cover of Sirius by Alan Parsons. The Probably most people know it as the Chicago Bulls theme song. I heard that one. Oh, obviously, I heard it many years ago when I used to get up in the middle of the night and watch the Chicago Bulls play. So watch them live, play their playoff games, and they always had this theme in the beginning, and it was something that I hadn't heard for many years until the Last Dance documentary came out 3 years ago or so, which kind of it was on Netflix, big thing. Probably the one time where I kind of got got on one of those hype waves, but not because I wanted to do it because it was trending, but just because it was really a topic that inspired me. So when I heard this track for the first time in many years, it it had such a big impact on me. All those emotions, all those memories came back, and I immediately ran up to my studio and recorded this cover in. I think it took less than 3 hours to complete the whole thing. It was the quickest production that I've ever done, and for some reason, it is the one that has the most success of everything I've done so far. This is the cover that gets the most views. It started out as a flop. It had 30 views, and I thought, okay, that's a total flop, like it sometimes happens. But for some reason, this one developed a life of its own after a while, and nowadays it does 5,000 views on YouTube each day, which is completely crazy. It went over a million. It's 1.6 million at the moment. And the only explanation that I have is I was so inspired when I heard it, the original, that I was kind of able to capture some of that magic when I recreated it, as I always hope to do with these things.
That's fantastic, that is, Borna. So, mate, just to be that inspired by a piece of music that you make it your own and be able to make it your own, it must be an absolutely amazing feeling. And to get the response you're getting, again, for something for doing something you love, absolutely fantastic. So, I've got a couple more questions here. Right, this one, you may not, your answer may change day to day on this. But if you could appear on stage with any band, at any venue, at any time, who, when, and why?
That would have to be Iron Maiden Rock in Rio 2001. That was, I mean, I told you that I started to listen to Iron Maiden in the early 2000s. And back then, I had this prized possession, which was a DVD of that concert. And even I can't even guess how many times I've listened to this whole thing. I absolutely loved it. I loved the stage show, the set list, the energy that they had. I thought back then, wow, look at these old guys, how much energy they can bring to the stage. Now thinking back, I think Bruce Dickinson was mid 40s back then. So nowadays I wouldn't say he was an old man, but as a teenager back then, I thought, wow, look at these old guys. They really bringing the fire. So that would be the one concert that shaped me the most. I used to listen to it when getting up in the morning before I went to school, and yeah, that's my answer. That's the one.
So Borna Matosic at Rock in Rio. Fantastic.
Exactly. If I get a TARDIS, that is my first trip.
That's absolutely brilliant. And again, if you haven't heard it, listen to it because it starts with this wonderful song called "The Wicker Man," and I won't go down that road, Ash. Don't worry. Nice anyway. So we're gonna with the TARDIS, we're gonna see Borna at Rock in Rio with Iron Maiden playing The Wicker Man. I will once that happens, I will definitely watch the concert again. Fantastic stuff. So really, just before I sign off and hand back to Ash, you've done your covers, you've done your bonkers. I've seen those on your YouTube channel. When are we going to hear Borna's interpretation of "Nobody Does It Better" in your own big style?
Oh, probably after I've done some other things first. Especially when we're talking about Bond themes. I have one on my YouTube channel which isn't actually a Bond theme, which is called "And So the World Ends," and that was one where I thought, how if I got the gig, if they told me to write a Bond theme, what would I come up with? That was the result of that, and it was so much fun, and especially with my collaborators, the Mesdames Musicales. This is the perfect combination of instruments to do this sort of music. This, which is one of the reasons why we've done several of the Bond covers. But before we do any more Bond covers, I have actually one more self-written Bond song, which is almost finished. We did all the recordings, and we even shot a music video for it, but it's not mixed yet. I still have to do some orchestration and do all the finishing bits, which has taken me forever because other things got in the way. Once in a while, I get one of those really big, interesting projects that take so much time from me that I can't do the original stuff. I mean, I did original music for Victory of the Doctor and everything, but my songwriting basically for my songwriting. So this is the song that I still have on my to-do list before we continue with any other Bond themes, and it's called "Frozen Heart." I don't
Well,
think I've shared that anywhere else yet.
so you heard it here first. Listen out for Borna's "Frozen Heart," hopefully coming to James Bond film number. Which film is the next one, Ash?
26.
26.
Hopefully, fingers crossed. If anyone's listening, make it the theme for Bond 26.
If they should just name the film Frozen Heart, and then we can go from there.
It'd be perfect.
Most
They can be inspired by the song.
Borna, thank you so much for answering my long and rambling questions this evening. It's been an absolute joy to talk to you. I'm going to hand back to Ash now.
Cheers, Ed. Cheers. Borna, you've been fantastic. Thanks ever so much. Now, usually I do the wrap-up, but I have a young man called James Sylvester who I've entrusted with the line. Shall we say it? We'll say it together first. And on that bombshell.
On that bombshell.
Yeah, see,
I want to know who this young James Sylvester is. It's very kind of you.
I'm not sure I should interest you. We couldn't even say that synchronized. Should we go?
On that bombshell, I've been James, and I'm not as young as Ash says I am. Ash?
Well, I've been Ash. I'm not used to this position. I'll say that again. That doesn't sound good.
Jesus Christ, yeah, we're not on camera, thank you.
Yeah, let's start again. I've been Ash.
I've been Ed. Ash never calls me young.
No, that's true. And then Borna, you're right just to say, and I've been Borna.
I have been Borna for a long time.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Until next time, folks. Goodbye.